I am Bowden Reed, 36 years old, a bridge engineer living in Denver. For the past few years, my life has been like a straight, unwavering road. No twists, no stops, just work and silence. I liked it that way because it helped me forget the things I didn't want to remember. But deep inside, I have always carried a heavy regret. I was never able to protect my younger sister, Sienna. She died 3 years ago in a car accident that I always felt was somehow off. The police concluded it was a random accident, slippery road, rain, loss of control. But I didn't believe it. Sienna was the most careful person I knew, and her death, it was too sudden, too senseless. I wasn't there for her at the time, and now it's too late. For the past 3 years, I've buried the pain by throwing myself into work. Every day was the same. Wake up early, drink a cup of black coffee with no sugar, then head to the construction site. Measuring, calculating, building bridges that connect riverbanks or mountain slopes. I spoke little, smiled little, and those around me respected that. They called me the man of principle, always on time, always precise, always keeping my distance. But this weekend, everything changed. I don't know why. Perhaps because of the dream last night where Sienna appeared with a sad smile, or simply because the longing surged after an exhausting workday. I decided to drive up to the mountain suburbs, to the villa that our family had pooled money to buy as a wedding gift for Sienna. It was a gift from my parents, Derek and Zaria Reed, and from me as well. We wanted her to have a peaceful place to start her new life with her husband, Cedric Holt. Now, that villa is nothing but a memory, a place I haven't returned to since the funeral. I started up my old pickup truck, filled the tank, and began the journey. The mountain road was winding, cold wind rushing through the slightly open window, carrying the scent of pine forest and damp earth. I imagined the villa must be in a pitiful state of abandonment. Windows covered in thick dust, roof tiles moldy from rain and snow, the flower garden withered and neglected. 3 years with no one around, Cedric probably couldn't be bothered to check on it, busy with his new life or whatever. I wondered if the villa was still intact or if time and nature had swallowed it whole. My heart beat a little faster at the thought of stepping inside, touching Sienna's mementos. Perhaps I would sit on the porch, gaze out over the valley, and try to forgive myself for failing to save her. As the truck turned onto the road leading up the hill, I nearly slammed on the brakes. Before me was not the desolate scene I had imagined. The front garden was blooming vibrantly, deep red roses crowding alongside golden marigolds as if they were watered and pruned daily. The stone pathway was spotless, not a single fallen leaf scattered, even though autumn had passed and golden leaves were carpeting the roads. I rubbed my eyes, wondering if I had the wrong address. But no. The house number was still there, and the familiar shape of the villa stood clear. The house was bright, windows slightly ajar to let the breeze in, the exterior strangely clean. White paint still glossy, not a stain or cobweb in sight. My heart began to pound. Who had done this? Cedric. But he lived down in the city, and since Sienna's death, he had barely kept in touch with the family. Or someone else? I parked, turned off the engine, and stepped out with slightly trembling legs. The villa keys were still in my pocket, the set Sienna had once given me as a spare. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Perhaps a kind neighbor or a cleaning service Cedric had hired. But an uneasy premonition kept rising, like an undercurrent. I unlocked the front door. The click echoed in the unnaturally quiet air. Stepping inside, I was even more stunned. The house was cozy and tidy, not a speck of dust. The faint scent of lavender essential oil lingered in the air, as if someone had recently burned a candle. The walnut furniture gleamed without a scratch or fingerprint. The bed in the bedroom was neatly made, blankets and pillows folded precisely, as if waiting for the owner to return. Everything suggested regular use, not abandonment after Sienna's death. I stood frozen in the living room, heart racing. This wasn't a haunted house, but it felt like someone was living here secretly without permission. I walked around the house, checking every corner. The kitchen was spotless. The fridge held a few bottles of water and fresh fruit. Fresh. Someone had bought them? I opened the closet and saw unfamiliar items. A men's jacket that wasn't Cedric's, and a short, revealing women's dress. A chill ran through me. This was Sienna's house, the last memento we had given her. Who dared? I didn't call the police right away. Perhaps it was a misunderstanding. Perhaps Cedric had a reason. But the uneasy feeling wouldn't let me leave without doing something. I stayed quiet, but in my mind, a plan formed. I drove down to the nearest town and bought a discreet security camera system. Tiny ones, Wi-Fi connected, viewable remotely via phone. Back at the villa, I quietly installed them. One in the living room, one in the kitchen, a few around the yard and entrance. No one knew except me. This was the way to find out who was coming to this place. The last memento our family had dedicated to Sienna. I left at sunset, heart full of worry but also a touch of anticipation. Like stepping into a cat and mouse game whose ending I didn't yet know. A few days later, while at the construction site, my phone buzzed with an alert from the camera app. I quickly opened it, heart racing. The footage was clear. A man appeared at the villa door, moving with the familiarity of someone who belonged there. It was Cedric Holt, my brother-in-law, 34 years old. He looked the same, tall and thin, messy black hair, wearing an old leather jacket. But what stunned me was that he wasn't alone. Beside him was a young, beautiful woman, seductive in appearance, long hair cascading over her shoulders, wearing a tight, short dress. They acted intimately. He had his arm around her waist, laughing and saying something as he opened the door, entering like a long-time couple. I sat frozen in my truck, watching them move through the house via the cameras. She sat on the sofa. He got water from the kitchen. Then they embraced on the bed. My blood boiled. What right did Cedric have? The villa belonged to Sienna, and after her death it was the family's. Yet he acted like the owner. I didn't act immediately. I waited and watched. Over the following weeks, the cameras captured everything. They came regularly on weekends, late Friday afternoon, staying until Sunday evening. They vacationed, cooked, laughed, enjoyed the villa as if it were legally theirs, unburdened by the deceased. I watched the videos over and over, heart in turmoil. I didn't want to interfere in his personal life. Sienna had been gone 3 years. Cedric had the right to find new happiness. But something felt wrong. The girl looked very young, perhaps only in her 20s, and the way they looked at each other. Too passionate, too soon. And what haunted me most? They never brought Dylan, my nephew, Sienna and Cedric's son, now 9 years old. Dylan, the shy child, deprived of love since his mother's death. I remembered him. Big round eyes, often looking down, speaking little. The last time we met, he hugged me tightly and asked, "Where has Mommy been for so long, Uncle?" And now, every time I saw Cedric and his lover happily in Sienna's house, laughing, embracing, enjoying, I had only one haunting question. While they were there indulging, where was that poor child and how was he living? The videos from the cameras kept replaying in my mind like a horror film, keeping me awake night after night. During the day at the construction site, I tried to focus on measurements and calculating the strength of bridges. But whenever my hands were free, images of Cedric and that girl flooded back. They laughed loudly in the garden, embraced on the sofa, the very sofa where Sienna used to sit reading books to Dylan. I gripped the steering wheel of my truck tightly, teeth grinding. It had been 3 weeks and Dylan hadn't appeared even once. The boy was only 9 years old. He needed food, schooling, someone to hold him when he was scared. Cedric was his father, but what was he doing? Neglecting his son to chase after a lover? Leaving the child alone for 3 whole weekends without him? The thought made my blood boil. I'm not the type to meddle in others' affairs, but this was family, my own nephew, Sienna's son. That weekend, I sat at home, eyes glued to my phone screen. The camera app alerted me at the usual time. Late Friday afternoon. I opened it, heart pounding. Cedric's car rolled into the driveway, kicking up dust on the hillside road. He turned off the engine, stepped out with a wide grin, then opened the passenger door. The figure of a woman, that girl, emerged, long hair flowing in the mountain wind, tight short dress hugging her seductive figure. They embraced right at the door as if the villa were their private love nest. I turned off the screen and stood up abruptly. 3 weeks was more than enough. No more watching from afar. I had to confront them. I jumped into my pickup, started the engine, and sped up the mountain road. Wind howled through the windows, but the fire in my chest burned hotter. I would ask directly about the villa, about them, and most importantly, about Dylan. The road up the hill was winding, but I drove like a maniac, braking hard at the curves. My heart raced wildly, hands gripping the wheel until my knuckles turned white. I imagined the confrontation. They would be surprised. Cedric would stammer excuses, but I didn't care. I needed the truth. As my truck turned into the narrow path to the villa, I saw Cedric's car parked neatly beside the flower garden. They were out in the yard. The girl was picking a few roses, Cedric joking about something. I parked a short distance away, turned off the engine, and stepped out. The mountain air was biting cold, but sweat poured down my back. I walked into the yard trying to keep my voice calm, but as soon as I passed through the gate, they whipped around. Fear was plain on both their faces. Cedric froze like a statue, face turning pale, lips moving but no words coming out. He stood rigid, arms hanging limp, as if seeing a ghost in broad daylight. The girl beside him took a half step back, hand clutching her bag strap warily. I stopped, taking a deep breath. The atmosphere was tense to the point of suffocation. Mountain wind whistled, leaves rustled, but between us, only deadly silence. I forced a smile and raised my hand in greeting. "Hey, Cedric, long time no see." He swallowed hard, trying to regain composure. His face was still pale, but he stammered, "Bowden? What are you doing here? Why didn't you call first?" His voice trembled like a child caught red-handed. The girl stood still, eyes sizing me up. I turned to her, keeping my tone gentle. "Hello? I'm Bowden, Sienna's brother." Cedric quickly interrupted, introducing hastily. This is Maya. Maya Sloan. She's 25, works as a bartender at a bar in the city." Maya forced a polite smile, but it was strained, unable to hide her uneasy eyes. Her posture was stiff, as if concealing something major. I nodded, observing. She was young and beautiful, but there was something artificial in that smile, like a mask. We stood there for a moment, the air heavy. I didn't want to beat around the bush. After brief small talk, "How's work? Or nice weather today, huh?" I got straight to the point. My heart pounded hard, but I kept my voice steady. "Cedric, I know you and Maya come here most weekends. This is Sienna's villa, as you know. But that's not what bothers me. I'm really worried about Dylan. Where is he? Why do you two always come here without bringing the boy along when he's still so young?" Cedric immediately avoided my eyes, looking at the ground, then at the flower garden. His face flushed red, then paled. He stammered excuses, voice vague. "Dylan? The kid's playing at a friend's house. School friends, you know. Or at the neighbor's. He loves it. It's fine, Bowden." Then he quickly changed the subject. "Anyway, driving these mountain roads is dangerous. It's getting dark. Drive safe going back. Busy with work? It's cold up here." He rambled on, anything to avoid talking about the child. I looked at him, full of suspicion. Cedric was clumsily dodging like a kid hiding candy behind his back. His eyes darted everywhere, hands fidgeting with his shirt hem, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cold wind. He was clearly uncomfortable being questioned about childcare. Maya stood silent, not interjecting, just clutching her bag tighter, eyes gazing into the distance. I wanted to yell, to grab him by the collar and demand answers. But no, I didn't want to cause a scene at the villa. This place had been Sienna's sanctuary, not a spot for arguments. I took a deep breath and nodded. "All right then, have a good weekend." Then I turned and left silently. But inside I felt choked, as if someone were squeezing my chest. Watching them stand there carefree, enjoying the space that belonged to my sister, made me want to vomit. The villa lit up, the garden vibrant, all mocking my pain. I walked to my truck, started the engine, and sped away. Mountain wind roared in my ears, but the voice in my heart was louder. "Where is Dylan? Is the boy okay?" I didn't go home. Instead, I drove straight to the city center, to the rental apartment where Cedric and Dylan had lived since Sienna's death. The highway stretched endlessly, headlights cutting through the darkness. I remembered the apartment, small and rundown, in a rundown neighborhood full of leaning buildings and blaring horns. Completely opposite the luxurious mountain villa air. Sienna had lived there with Cedric before the villa was finished. Now it was Dylan's last refuge. I parked on the curb, heart pounding. It was late, but I had to see the boy with my own eyes to feel at ease. The building's front door creaked as I pushed it open. The hallway was pitch dark, reeking of mildew. I climbed the stairs, footsteps heavy. Apartment 304, the door was unlocked. I frowned and pushed it gently. It opened and the scene inside made my heart constrict. Inside was dim yellow light from a dangling bulb, the clanging of pots and pans from the kitchen, and a strong burnt smell spreading thickly. Light smoke drifted. I stepped in, calling softly for the boy, but no answer. Then I saw Dylan. The boy was skinny, hair slightly tousled, standing precariously on an old wooden chair, reaching toward the stove. In front of him was a small pan on the electric burner, eggs cracked but stirred clumsily. Thin smoke rising because the heat was too high. Oil splattered and Dylan fumbled, hands trembling as if afraid of dropping the pan. He wore an old t-shirt, baggy shorts, barefoot. My heart seemed to stop. Dylan startled at the sound of the door whipping around, big round eyes full of fear. The pan nearly fell, but he caught it. In that moment, all my questions about Cedric's behavior answered themselves with an image more real than any words. The boy was here, alone, trying to fend for himself while his father was enjoying himself on the mountain with his lover. I quickly stepped into the small kitchen, the air stifling with the acrid smell of burning and faint smoke. Dylan was standing on an old wooden chair, wobbling under the boy's weight. His tiny hands clumsily holding a spatula, trying to stir something in the pan. The boy's face was flushed from the heat, sweat pouring down, and I clearly saw a red burn on the back of his right hand, a long streak, swollen as if hot oil had splattered. My heart constricted, as if someone were squeezing it tightly. This was my nephew, Sienna's son, and now he looked like a street child in his own home. Without a word, I walked over and hugged Dylan tightly. His body was feather-light, so skinny that I could feel every rib through the thin shirt. He trembled slightly from surprise, arms hanging limp, the spatula clanging to the floor. "Uncle Bowden, what are you doing here?" Dylan asked softly, voice shaking as if afraid of being scolded for doing something wrong. I just stroked the boy's head, choked up, unable to respond yet. Tears welled in my eyes, but I swallowed them back. No crying now. The kid needed me to be strong. I took a deep breath. The burnt smell still lingered, reminding me of the harsh reality. Cedric had abandoned his own son to chase after a strange woman. I lifted Dylan off the chair and sat him on the old dining chair at the table. "Let me see your hand," I said gently, taking his hand. The burn was bright red, skin blistered. It must hurt terribly, but he didn't complain. I ran to the bathroom, finding the first aid kit. Luckily, there was still some burn cream. I cleaned the wound with cool water, applied the cream, and wrapped it lightly with bandage. Dylan bit his lip, eyes fixed on the floor, not daring to look at me. "Does it hurt?" I asked. He shook his head, but I knew he was lying. How could it not hurt? A 9-year-old child cooking for himself, enduring alone. Cedric, you bastard. I silently went to the kitchen and cleaned up the mess. Blackened pan, half-raw, half-burnt sandwich, a few cracked eggs scattered. I turned off the electric stove, then opened the fridge. It was pitiful inside. A few withered apples, expired milk, and some yellowing vegetables. No proper food. My heart ached sharply. I gathered what was still usable, washed it, and started preparing a simple light meal. Fried eggs, toasted bread, and salad from the remaining greens. The smell of food gradually replaced the burnt odor, but my heart remained heavy. When the hot meal was placed on the table, golden eggs, crispy toast, and a glass of orange juice I'd quickly bought from a nearby store. Dylan sat down and devoured it as if he'd been starving for days. Each spoonful into the boy's mouth choked me up. with pity, pain, and a sense that something was deeply wrong that I'd never realized before. Dylan ate so fast he nearly choked, eyes lighting up a bit but still head bowed as if afraid someone would take it away. I sat watching, hands clenched under the table. How long had it been since the boy had a proper meal? Cedric had promised to take care of him after Sienna's death, but what was this? Abandoning the child? My blood boiled with anger, but I held it in. Not the time to explode. Dylan needed peace first. When Dylan finished, wiping his mouth with his sleeve, I sat across from him, keeping my voice gentle to avoid worrying the boy. Dylan, tell Uncle. Why are you home alone? Where's your dad? Dylan bowed his head, fingers twisting together as if struggling internally. The boy was silent for a moment, then mumbled, Dad goes with Aunt Maya. Every weekend. I'm home alone. My heart felt stabbed. Maya, the girl at the villa. So Cedric abandoned his son for his girlfriend. I asked further, voice still soft. What about weekdays? Does your dad take care of you? Dylan hesitated, eyes reddening. Dad's busy. Aunt Maya comes over a lot, then Dad leaves. I cook for myself, go to bed myself. I swallowed hard, trying to stay calm. I asked if anyone said anything to him, scolded or scared him. Dylan bowed his head lower, hands twisting tighter. The boy's voice was barely a whisper. He said that Dad and Aunt Maya often scolded him, calling him a nuisance, disobedient. Sometimes Dad even said he was old enough to fend for himself. Those words left me stunned. Dylan was only 9, far too young to care for himself, let alone be treated like a burden. A nuisance? The boy was his son, his own flesh and blood. I imagined the scene. Cedric snapping, Maya smirking, Dylan shrinking in a corner. My blood boiled, fists clenching. How dare he? If Sienna were alive, she would never let her son suffer like this. I hugged Dylan and whispered, It's okay. Uncle's here now. After calming him and putting Dylan to bed, I told fairy tales, rubbed his back until his eyes closed. I sat silently on the old sofa, mind blank. The room was pitch dark, only the even breathing from Dylan's bedroom. I looked around, cracked walls, worn furniture, chilly atmosphere. This had once been Sienna's home. Now it was hell for her son. I knew I couldn't let this continue. Cedric had to be held accountable. But now I needed to act. Call the police? No, not enough yet. I thought of CPS, Child Protective Services. They would help, but my heart was full of worry. What would happen to Dylan if separated from his father? No matter how awful Cedric was, he was still the dad. I sat there until late, mind reeling with memories. Newborn Dylan, Sienna holding him with a radiant smile. And now, I had to save the boy. For the rest of the weekend, I stayed at the apartment, caring for Dylan like a real father. Saturday morning, I took him out for breakfast at a nearby pancake place. Hot stacks, sweet syrup. Dylan ate slowly, eyes brightening, shyly smiling when I joked. Those rare smiles from Dylan both relieved and pained me. We walked in the park. I pushed the swing. Dylan laughed loudly, wind tousling his hair. It had been so long since the boy was this happy. In the afternoon, we played inside, building with Lego, drawing pictures. Dylan drew one, a family with Sienna in the center, but Cedric faded. I hugged him, heart aching. Evenings, I cooked dinner, roasted chicken, fresh salad. Dylan ate his fill, then fell asleep on my shoulder. Sunday was the same, grocery shopping, buying new things for the boy, clothes, books. We watched cartoons, laughing loudly. But every time Dylan asked, Is Dad home yet, Uncle? My heart tightened. I lied. Your dad will be back soon. But inside I knew. I wouldn't let Cedric continue like this. Monday morning I woke early and drove Dylan to school. The boy hugged me tightly at the gate, eyes glistening. Then I went straight to Child Protective Services, CPS. The office was in the city center, a gray building bustling with people. I sat waiting, heart anxious. When it was my turn, I clearly explained the signs. Dylan left unsupervised, burned from cooking alone, lack of proper food. Cedric absent for extended periods without arranging care. The caseworker, a middle-aged woman with stern eyes, took detailed notes. "Do you have evidence?" I described the villa cameras, my visit, Dylan's words. She nodded and opened a file. "We'll conduct an unannounced inspection, assess the living environment's safety, and work directly with Cedric Holt regarding his parental obligations under the law." I left the office, heart a bit lighter. A few days later, CPS sent a warning letter to Cedric. I received a copy via email, demanding improved childcare, warning of stronger measures if repeated. I exhaled in relief, reading it over and over in my truck. At least Dylan was now under official child protection oversight. But intuition told me this wasn't over. How would Cedric react? And Maya? I drove home, mind full of worry. Dylan needed me more than ever. After some time passed, I tried to return to my normal routine. The bridges in Denver don't wait for anyone. Measuring, calculating, supervising the workers. All of it helped me forget the troubles surrounding Cedric. I called Dylan a few times a week, asking about school, telling funny stories, even sending small gifts by mail. Storybooks, Lego sets. The boy laughed loudly over the phone, his voice clearer than before, but I could still hear a trace of sadness creeping in. "Dad goes out a lot less now, Uncle. Aunt Maya comes over less too." I nodded to myself, feeling temporary relief. Perhaps the CPS warning had worked. Cedric was probably trying to make amends. I told myself that, trying to keep my distance. No more cameras, no more surveillance. I didn't want to get deeply involved in his messy life. The villa was now the past. I even considered selling it to erase the painful memories. My life needed peace for Dylan's sake, for Sienna's, but life wouldn't let me rest. That weekend I had plans to meet an old friend, Mark Bennett, my close college buddy, now a detective in Denver's Economic Crimes Unit. Mark, tall, with a warm, deep voice, had always been my rock in college. We arranged to meet at a small bar in the city, a quiet spot with soft jazz music to catch up on old times. I drove there at dusk, parked in the cramped lot, and walked in with a rare, relaxed mood. The smell of fresh beer and faint cigarette smoke lingered, muffled laughter from a few groups of patrons. But as soon as I pushed the door open, I hesitated slightly. This bar felt familiar. Then I realized this was exactly where Maya Sloan, my brother-in-law's mistress, worked. I remembered Cedric stammering the introduction at the villa. She works as a bartender at a bar in the city. Yes, this was it. My heart beat faster. Maya was behind the bar, mixing cocktails with practiced moves, hair tied high, professional smile on her face. I didn't want to draw attention, didn't want more trouble. Cedric's affairs were his own. I chose a table in a dark corner hidden behind a pillar, quietly waiting for Mark. I ordered a beer, eyes on my watch, trying not to glance at the bar. While waiting, the place gradually filled up. Jazz music played softly, patrons pulled chairs noisily. I sipped my beer, mind wandering to Dylan. The boy had a math test today. I'd promised to call about the results. But then, my eyes inadvertently stopped at the bar. Maya was there, wiping glasses, chatting and smiling with a customer. What caught my attention more was the man sitting next to her. He was heavily tattooed, dragons coiling on muscular arms, a menacing face with a scar across his cheek, short cropped hair, wearing a black leather jacket. Not a regular patron. The two talked intimately, laughing, occasionally leaning in for him to lightly kiss her cheek like a real couple. Maya giggled, hand stroking his arm. My heart pounded. Who was this? Was Maya cheating on Cedric? Or was Cedric just one of how many? I turned away, trying to focus on my beer. Not your business, Bowden. This tangled love triangle had nothing to do with me. How many men Maya had was her affair. I told myself that, but unease kept rising. Cedric was weak, easily led. If Maya was playing some game, he would be the victim. Mark arrived 10 minutes late, clapping my shoulder with a loud laugh. "Long time no see, buddy. How's work?" We reminisced about the old days, college, road trips, now work and family. I told him about Dylan and CPS, but avoided mentioning Maya or the villa. Mark nodded, sharing about his current case, economic crimes fraud. We laughed and drank a few rounds. But throughout, I couldn't help glancing at the bar. Maya and the tattooed guy were still there, even more intimate. He whispered something. Maya laughed loudly. I tried to stay calm, but my mind raced. After catching up and parting, Mark shook my hand, promising next time. I pulled my hat low to avoid notice and headed out. The night was late, wind biting cold, but I walked slowly, trying not to look at the bar. But as I passed by, a snippet of conversation reached my ears, making me freeze. Maya's voice, soft but audible amid the music. "That guy's so easy to manipulate. Just a few more times." The tattooed man's response, low and gravelly like a growl. "Get him to trust you a bit more. Then it's all done." My heart pounded like a drum in my chest. That guy. Who? My brother-in-law or someone else I hadn't seen? The way they spoke, intimate, secretive, with clear intent, made me deeply uneasy. This wasn't a normal romance. Something shady was going on, like a plan. I stood frozen for a second, blood rushing to my head. Not wanting to be caught eavesdropping, I immediately left the bar, walking quickly to the parking lot. My legs trembled slightly, hands clutching the keys tightly. The bar glowed behind me, music still playing, but my heart was ice cold. On the drive home, those words replayed in my head like a broken record. So easy to manipulate. Get him to trust you a bit more. Then it's all done. I thought of Cedric, the weak man, blindly infatuated with Maya. He trusted her enough to neglect Dylan, treat the villa like their own. And now, was Maya exploiting him with that tattooed guy? The coincidence sent chills down my spine. This love triangle seemed far from simple. What game was Maya playing? Scamming money, or worse? I recalled the pristine villa, the camera footage of them happily together. But now everything appeared in a different light. Was Cedric the prey? And Dylan? What would happen to the boy if his father got into trouble? I drove through the night in turmoil, headlights cutting through the dark road, wind howling through the windows. Intuition told me that behind the calm facade, something more dangerous was brewing than I had imagined. I had to find out. But how? Call Cedric or follow them? I parked in front of my house, turned off the engine, and sat in the darkness. This night would be long. Many days after the incident at the bar, the unease clung to me like a persistent shadow. Those fragmented words I had overheard, "That guy's so easy to manipulate. Get him to trust you a bit more. Then it's all done," kept replaying in my head, preventing any peace of mind. During the day at the construction site, I tried to focus on measurements and calculating bridge strength, but whenever my hands were idle, they resurfaced. Who were they talking about? And what was all done? Some kind of scam? I wondered if I was over-imagining things, but the image of the tattooed man, his cold eyes, smirking grin, haunted me. Maya appeared young and seductive, but now I saw her as a spider spinning a web. Cedric was weak, easily led. He would fall into the trap without realizing. And Dylan? What would happen to the boy if his father got into trouble? I lost sleep, lying awake in bed, staring at the dark ceiling, mind swirling with worst-case scenarios. I couldn't sit still. I started paying attention to the bar where Maya worked. After work or on evenings when I had free time, I drove to the surrounding area, sitting in a cafe across the street or parking in a dark spot to observe from afar, avoiding notice. I wore a low-brimmed cap, dark jacket, sat in my truck with a cooling cup of coffee, eyes fixed on the bar entrance. The bar was on a busy street corner, neon lights flashing, loud music spilling out. I didn't go inside, afraid of being recognized, but watched from a distance. The first time I sat for 2 hours, seeing Maya mix drinks, chatting and smiling with customers, but the tattooed guy didn't appear. I went home feeling both disappointed and relieved. But I returned, second time, third time. I noted things in a notebook. Maya's shift times, closing hours, regular customers. It felt like clumsy surveillance, but I couldn't stop. Intuition told me something was wrong. Over several observations, I noticed the tattooed man appeared infrequently but always with clear intent. Arriving alone, sitting in a secluded corner, brief conversation with Maya, then leaving. No public affection like the first time I'd seen, but more discreet. He came when the bar was crowded around 10 p.m., wearing a jacket covering his tattoos, sitting at the dark end of the bar. Maya served him a drink, then they whispered, briefly, just a few minutes before he paid and left without looking back. No intimacy, no laughter. Always the same, quick, secretive. My heart pounded as I watched through the truck window. This wasn't a lover. A partner, perhaps? What was the plan? This change made me realize their relationship wasn't just romantic. Something more serious was happening behind the scenes. I remembered Mark mentioning economic crimes, luring victims into signing documents, transferring assets. Cedric had life insurance money from Sienna, the villa. Was Maya targeting him? The thought chilled me. I had to act. I decided not to rush, no storming into the bar demanding answers, no calling the police yet, but to meet Mark Bennett again. We arranged at a familiar cafe, quiet with the warm aroma of roasted coffee. I arrived early, sitting in a corner, holding 2 sneaky photos from the bar visits, one of Maya smiling behind the counter, one of the tattooed man sitting nearby, face menacing. I'd taken them with my phone, blurry but identifiable. Mark arrived, clapping my shoulder. "You look tense, man. What's up?" I told him everything I'd overheard that night, no embellishments, no over-speculation. I heard them talking about that guy being easy, building more trust. "I think it's about Cedric, my brother-in-law." I handed him the photos, voice trembling. Mark took them, frowning as he examined closely. "Bowden, you know I can't access confidential info just for a personal request. But I'll check within allowed limits using public databases and watch lists. Don't get your hopes up." I nodded, heart full of worry. We chatted casually about Dylan work, but my mind was on the photos. Mark left, promising to call back. I sat a bit longer, sipping bitter coffee, mind in turmoil. If Mark found nothing, what then? Keep watching? Or warn Cedric directly? That afternoon, my phone rang. Mark, voice noticeably lower, no longer cheerful. "Bowden," I checked. The 2 in the photos match records of a pair of suspects in a large-scale fraud ring tied to a transnational crime network. My heart seemed to stop. I slumped onto the sofa, gripping the phone tightly. Mark explained the group lacked enough evidence for arrests but was under suspicion and surveillance, linked to multiple cases of luring victims into signing financial documents, transferring assets, or fronting shady transactions. They target vulnerable, trusting people or those in unhealthy relationships. They use women like Maya to lure, then the guy, his name's Jax, with a prior record, handles the rest. Mark emphasized, "From my description, Cedric Holt was at high risk of being the next target. He's soft, has money, assets. Perfect for them." This truth left me reeling. I knew Cedric was weak-willed, lacking resolve, easily manipulated, the exact prey such organizations sought. He was blindly infatuated with Maya, neglecting Dylan, treating the villa like their own. And now, was Maya getting him to sign something? Transfer the villa? Or the insurance money? I thanked Mark, hung up, the room falling silent. My mind raced. Sienna died 3 years ago. An accident? Or related? No, don't think that. But unease surged. I couldn't let it go further. I decided to meet Cedric and talk. I had to warn him whether he believed me or not. I drove to his apartment, heart pounding. The door opened. Cedric was on the sofa, Dylan playing Lego in the corner. The boy ran over and hugged me, smiling happily. Cedric frowned. "What are you here for?" I spoke slowly, trying to stay calm, recounting what I'd seen at the bar, detail by detail, no additions, no excessive speculation. I emphasized that Maya wasn't simple, that I'd overheard her and the tattooed man talking about manipulating someone, and that Cedric was likely the target. "I'm not here to argue," I said. "I just want you to be careful. Some things aren't coincidences." Cedric was silent for a few seconds, but it wasn't thoughtful silence. His face flushed red, jaw clenching. He stood abruptly, the chair behind him crashing loudly. "Who do you think you are, lecturing me?" he shouted. "You think I'm an idiot? You've been looking at me like that for ages, like I'm worthless just because I don't live the way you want." Before I could respond, Cedric pointed straight at my face. "You're making this up, aren't you? All because you don't want me and Maya at that villa anymore. It's Sienna's villa, so what? She's dead. You have no right to decide for me." Dylan shrank in the corner, arms wrapped around his knees, eyes reddening. I glanced at the boy, lowering my voice. "Cedric, Dylan's here. Calm down." But that only fueled the fire. "You dare mention the kid?" Cedric roared. "You reported to CPS, didn't you? You're the one who had them inspect my home. What do you want? To steal my son?" He stepped closer, voice shaking with rage. "You ruin my life, then pretend to be the good guy. Bastard!" The room descended into chaos. Dylan started crying silently, shoulders shaking. I stood still, neither retreating nor advancing. "I don't want to take anything from you," I said, voice deepening. "If I drew CPS's attention, it's only because Dylan doesn't deserve to live like this." Cedric paused briefly, but his eyes quickly hardened with hatred. He said, "Get out. Out of my house. Never come back." I looked at Dylan one last time. The boy didn't dare lift his head. I understood my warnings were meaningless now. Cedric heard nothing beyond his own fear and anger. I turned and left, carrying a heavy feeling. I knew I couldn't save Cedric, but Dylan, I still could. I realized Cedric was too blinded by his feelings for Maya to listen to reason. He could no longer distinguish truth from manipulation. His eyes blazed, voice trembling with fury. I stayed calm, no more arguing. Before leaving, I left one final warning, gentle but firm. Keep your distance from those you're blindly trusting and watch over Dylan. The boy needs you. Cedric turned away, no response. I hugged Dylan one last time, whispering, "Take care of yourself, okay?" Then I walked out, heart heavy. Leaving Cedric's apartment, I descended the stairs feeling almost suffocated. Not from the argument, but from the clear sense that something very wrong was unfolding. A danger I hadn't fully seen, but could feel approaching step by step. All signs pointed the same way, and my intuition screamed that if I didn't act now, the consequences would be irreversible. After the confrontation with Cedric, I knew there was nothing more I could do. All my advice had been brushed aside, and Cedric was sinking deeper into his delusions and blind infatuation with Maya. He looked at me like an enemy, eyes blazing, voice trembling with anger. "You just want to ruin my life," his words still echoed in my head on the drive home. I had tried my best, telling him everything I'd observed, even mentioning Mark and the police warning. But it was useless. Cedric was so blinded that he saw Maya as everything, as his escape from the pain of losing Sienna. I could only stay silent, hoping things wouldn't get worse, hoping CPS would monitor closely, that Dylan would be safe, and that Cedric would wake up before it was too late. But deep down, I knew that hope was as fragile as a thread. I drove home in light rain, streetlights blurring on the wet pavement, heart full of unease. That night I sat alone in the living room, staring out the window, mind swirling with the worst scenarios. What were Maya and the tattooed man planning? Would Cedric lose everything? Money, the villa, even Dylan? A week passed slowly, as if time were stretching to test my patience. I tried to return to my daily rhythm. Early rising, black coffee with no sugar, then to the construction site. The roar of machinery, dust filling the air, bridges gradually taking shape under my hands. All of it helped me forget temporarily. I called Dylan every day, asking about school, telling funny stories to make him laugh. "What fun thing did you learn today?" "I got an A today." His clear voice lightened my heart, but I could still hear the underlying sadness. "Your dad's busy a lot, huh?" Dylan hesitated. "Dad goes out with Aunt Maya a lot, but he promised to come home early." I swallowed hard, trying not to press further. I didn't return to the bar, didn't follow anymore, afraid of being spotted, afraid of complicating things further. But night after night I dreamed of Sienna, my sister, standing there with sad eyes. "Protect Dylan for me." I woke up drenched in sweat, heart pounding. I knew I was waiting for a bomb to go off. That morning I woke early as usual, body tired but mind alert. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, birds singing in the yard, a normal day in Denver. I brewed a hot cup of coffee, the aroma filling the small kitchen, then sat on the sofa and turned on the morning news. Weather, politics, sports, all passing by as usual. I took the first sip of coffee, the familiar bitterness awakening my senses, but then my hand froze, the cup nearly dropping. On the screen was Cedric Holt, being escorted into the station by police, hands cuffed behind his back, face gaunt, eyes sunken. The news ticker read clearly, the reporter's voice cold. "Suspect in murder case turns himself in early this morning. Cedric Holt, 34, accused of homicide at a bar on the city outskirts." I sat frozen, the coffee cup falling to the floor, shattering, coffee splattering everywhere. The reporter continued, crime scene images flashing. "The victim is Maya Sloan, 25, a bartender at the bar where the incident occurred. Initial reports indicate the crime stemmed from a romantic dispute. The suspect has surrendered and is being held for investigation." Maya dead? Killed by Cedric? I couldn't believe it. Despite knowing Cedric was weak and impulsive, I never thought he could go as far as murder. He was obsessed with Maya. How could he? Images of him at the villa laughing with her now turned nightmarish. I sat stunned, mind in chaos, everything spinning. Or had Cedric discovered the truth? This revelation hit me like a punch to the chest, leaving me breathless. But then the one thing that snapped me awake was Dylan. The boy. Where was Dylan? Alone in the apartment? Scared? I jumped up, grabbed my keys, not bothering to change, and ran out the door. Without hesitation, I rushed out of the house, jumped into my pickup, started the engine, and sped madly toward Cedric's apartment. Morning traffic was heavy, horns blaring, but I didn't care, accelerating through red lights, heart pounding. Images of Dylan huddled alone kept flashing. The 9-year-old boy, not understanding, just knowing his dad was gone. When I arrived, several uniformed police were already at the apartment door, cars blocking the street, and a social worker, likely from CPS, taking notes. The atmosphere was heavy, neighbors peeked from windows. I parked hastily, ran over, breathing heavily. "I'm Bowden Reed, Dylan's uncle. Where is my nephew right now?" I saw Dylan huddled on the sofa through the open door, clutching his old stuffed animal, the teddy bear Sienna had bought him for his birthday, eyes red from fear. The boy looked smaller than ever, knees drawn up, face pale, not crying but trembling. He had no idea what was happening, only that his dad had left and strangers were everywhere. I stepped forward but was stopped by a tall officer. "Sir, who are you? You can't enter." I showed my ID, driver's license, Sienna's birth certificate, and explained I was Sienna's brother, Dylan's uncle. They checked thoroughly, made calls to verify. The minutes tense. I stood there, eyes fixed on Dylan, heart burning. Finally, they nodded. "All right, you can go in and see the boy." When he saw me, Dylan jumped up and hugged me tightly, his whole body shaking with fear. "Uncle Bowden, where did Dad go? Why are the police here?" The boy's voice broke, tears flowing. I held him close, rubbing his back, the familiar childlike scent of his hair choking me up. "It's okay. Uncle's here now. Everything will be fine." Though I wasn't sure of that myself, I knelt down, looking into his eyes. "Are you okay? Did anyone scare you?" Dylan shook his head, hugging tighter, the stuffed bear squeezed between us. The police around watched, but I ignored them. Dylan was the only priority now. After completing the information intake, they asked about Cedric, Maya, what I knew. The police left, leaving the apartment in a terrifying, heavy silence. Papers scattered, belongings in disarray, stale coffee smell from the kitchen. I gathered Dylan's essentials. Clothes, books, the stuffed bear, a few toys. The boy stood watching, eyes red. Where are we going, Uncle? I forced a smile. To Uncle's house. You'll stay with me for a while, okay? Dylan nodded, gripping my hand tightly. I gently led the boy out of that place full of chaotic memories. The apartment that had once been Sienna's home, now a hell. On the way to the truck, Dylan looked back, voice small. Will Dad come home, Uncle? I swallowed hard. Your dad's busy. But you have Uncle. I decided to take Dylan to my house, at least until CPS made an official decision. I called them on the way, reporting the situation. They promised quick handling. Watching the boy fall asleep in the truck, I knew clearly. Tonight and for many nights after, he would no longer have to endure loneliness. I would protect him for Sienna, for Cedric. But the tragedy had exploded and I felt the darkness still looming. When I brought Dylan home, I tried to stay calm, even though my heart was in complete turmoil. My small apartment in Denver, where I'd lived alone for years with simple furniture, stacks of engineering books on the shelves and the lingering scent of coffee, suddenly became a refuge for the boy. Dylan stepped inside, still clutching his stuffed animal tightly, eyes looking around bewildered, as if he didn't understand where he was. I forced a smile and led him to the kitchen. Sit here, kiddo. Uncle will warm some milk for you. I poured milk into a mug, microwaved it, then sat beside him at the table. Dylan huddled up, legs dangling without touching the floor, face pale after a terrifying night. I rubbed his shoulder, voice gentle. Don't be scared, okay? Uncle's here now. Dylan nodded, but his eyes were still red, tears streaming down. After seeing him calm down a bit, breathing more steadily, hands no longer shaking, I gently asked, Tell Uncle what happened. What went on last night? Dylan buried his face in his knees, voice small and trembling, as if gathering all his courage to speak. Last night, Dad brought Aunt Maya home. I was sleeping, but I heard the door open. Then, they started arguing. I clenched my fists, trying to keep my voice steady. How did they argue? Dylan swallowed, eyes fixed on the floor. Really badly, Uncle. I didn't understand what they were saying, just heard yelling, things slamming, glasses breaking, chairs falling. I was so scared. The boy's voice broke, tears pouring out. I hugged him tighter, heart aching like it was being cut. Imagining the scene. Cedric and Maya, the lovers I'd seen laughing at the villa, now tearing into each other in the cramped apartment while Dylan cowered in his room. Terrified, he hid in his room, clutching his stuffed animal and covering his ears, trying to block out the noise. I covered my ears the whole time, but I could still hear. Then heavy footsteps. Dad opened my door, face all red, said shortly he had to go out for a bit, then slammed the door, leaving me alone. Hearing that made my heart feel squeezed. Dylan waited forever, but his dad didn't return. He didn't dare sleep, crept out to the sofa, left the light on all night, huddled under the dim yellow glow, hugging his stuffed animal like a final shield. I was scared of ghosts, scared of the dark, but Dad didn't come back. I waited until morning, then the police knocked. They asked me all sorts of things, I cried. Then you came. Dylan's voice faded, trembling. Hearing that far, I clenched my hands, throat choked with pity for the child. The boy was only 9, had witnessed arguing, been abandoned alone overnight, then police swarming in. How could Cedric? I stroked Dylan's head, voice warm. It's not your fault. You were so brave going through such a scary night. Uncle's really proud of you. Dylan looked up, eyes glistening. You're proud of me, Uncle? I nodded and hugged him tight, but inside anger boiled. Cedric, you coward, so blinded you'd let your son suffer like this. And Maya, now dead, but where did this tragedy start? Dylan tiredly leaned his head on my shoulder. Just minutes later, he fell asleep. A heavy sleep after fighting through the night alone. I gently carried him to the sofa, tucked him in with a warm blanket, smoothed his messy hair. Watching Dylan sleep, face relaxed, I sat there for a long time, mind blank. The tragedy had erupted, but now it was time to face the aftermath. Once Dylan was deeply asleep, I opened my phone, hands slightly shaking. Latest news updates on the crime scene. Police had found the murder weapon, a kitchen knife, in an alley near the bar where Cedric appeared at dawn. The report said initially the incident was determined to stem from a romantic dispute escalating out of control. Crime scene images. Blood pooled on the bar floor, police tape cordoning off, reporters crowding. I sat stunned and turned off the screen. Though no solid evidence, I could piece it together somewhat. Cedric discovered Maya's affair with the tattooed man, or betrayal, or being scammed. Perhaps she demanded he sign something exposing the fraud plan. The argument exploded from words to violence, then in a moment of lost control, Cedric struck. Everything had crossed an irreparable line. I thought of the villa, the camera footage, how happily they'd been, now ending in blood. My heart was in chaos, angry at Cedric, pitying Maya despite her wickedness, and hurting most for Dylan. After reading the news, my phone rang. Mom's name on the screen. Surely my parents had seen the news early and called in panic. I stepped out to the balcony, evening cold wind rushing in, trying to keep my voice calm to ease their worry. My mother's voice, Zaria, burst into sobs immediately. Bowden? Oh God, son Cedric. He killed someone. Where's Dylan? How's the boy? I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. I'm with Dylan. He's safe. He just fell asleep after a very long night. I've brought him to my place. Silence on the other end for a few seconds, then my father's voice, Derek, came through hoarse and choked. We saw the news and nearly died. Cedric. How did he end up like this? He paused as if gathering strength to continue. Son, we can't take it anymore. Please take care of the boy for us. I gripped the phone tightly. I'll look after Dylan. Don't worry too much. Take care of your health. I'll keep you updated. My mother's sobs echoed on the line. Poor boy. Lost his mother, now his father too. My throat choked. I'll care for him. He's my sister's son. The call ended. I stood by the window, looking down at the city lights gleaming but heart heavy. My parents, Derek and Zaria, had suffered enough since losing Sienna, yet now faced this truth. I wondered if I'd realized sooner, could I have prevented this tragedy? In the days that followed, I devoted all my time to caring for Dylan. My life changed completely from a single engineer to an impromptu father. Early mornings, I made breakfast. Fried eggs, toasted bread, fresh fruit. Dylan ate heartily, eyes brightening. You cook so well, Uncle. I drove him to and from school, parking at the gate, hugging him tight. Study hard, okay? Uncle will pick you up this afternoon. Dylan nodded and ran in, but I saw him glance back as if afraid I'd disappear. Evenings, I prepared dinner, grilled meat, salad, hot soup. We ate together, talking about school. Today I played ball with friends. It was so fun, Uncle. I smiled, but ached inside. The boy tried to be cheerful to hide his sadness. Nights we played, building Lego, drawing pictures, watching cartoons. I read books to him before bed, stories of heroes, families. Dylan listened, eyes drowsy. You read just like Mom. I avoided the incident, only saying his dad was in trouble and couldn't come home for now. Will Dad come back, Uncle? Dylan asked, voice small. I hugged him. Your dad loves you a lot, but for now stay with Uncle, okay? At school, teachers checked on Dylan. They noticed he was quieter, often sitting alone during recess. I'd asked them to keep the family matter private, avoid classmates teasing or hurting him further. I understand, Mr. Bowden. The poor boy, the teacher said, eyes full of sympathy. I nodded, grateful. Dylan didn't need more pressure. He'd endured enough, losing his mother, father imprisoned, now living with me. Evenings, when Dylan was soundly asleep, I sat alone in the living room, letting thoughts swirl deeply. The house was so quiet I could hear the boy's steady breathing from the next room. Each time I looked at that small face lost in sleep, my heart tightened. Dylan had lost his mother, lost support from his father, and now his world was just me. That realization made me understand I had no right to hesitate anymore. No matter the difficulties ahead, I had to protect the boy to the end. A few weeks passed in simmering chaos like a lingering underground storm. Dylan gradually settled into a routine. The boy began smiling more and even recounting school stories with excitement. Every morning I woke early, warmed milk, made egg sandwiches, then drove him to school with a forced smile. "Study hard, okay? Uncle will pick you up this afternoon." Dylan nodded and hugged me tightly before running through the gate. In the afternoons we played in the small backyard, throwing a ball, building with Lego, or just sitting on the swing watching the sunset. Evenings I read books to him, tales of heroes and magic, and Dylan drifted off with a dreamy smile. But behind that peace I knew the boy was still struggling. Every night he jolted awake, calling Dad in his sleep, then clinging to me when I rushed in. I patted his back to soothe him back to sleep. As for me, while caring for him, I followed the case developments through the news. Every morning I turned on the TV, read online reports updating every detail. Cedric detained, deeper investigation, signs of financial involvement. I called Mark a few times. "Anything new?" Mark sighed. "Still digging. It doesn't seem like simple jealousy." Unease kept rising. I knew the trial would reveal much, and I dreaded what I'd hear. On the day of the first murder trial hearing, I attended as an indirect victim's relative and Dylan's temporary guardian. I didn't want to go. Inside me was a tangle of emotions, anger mixed with pity. But I knew I couldn't avoid it. I needed to face the truth firsthand, to understand what had led to this tragic end. I left Dylan with a kind neighbor, quickly saying I had errands and would return soon, then drove to the central Denver courthouse. The streets were crowded as usual, but my mind was blank. Throughout the drive, images of Cedric replayed relentlessly, heavy and hard to name. The courthouse loomed cold with towering gray stone columns. From the entrance, the atmosphere was already thick. I passed through security scanners, hands slightly trembling as I handed over documents, then followed the crowd into the courtroom. Inside, the room was packed, reporters crowded at the back, cameras flashing discreetly. Maya's family huddled in a corner, sobs stifled in their throats. Lawyers and court staff bustled, preparing for the session. I chose a seat in the back row, trying to stay calm despite my pounding heart. Fluorescent lights cast a cold glow, whispers filled the room. When the judge entered, everyone stood and the trial officially began. I took a deep breath, telling myself I only needed the truth, nothing else. At that moment, my eyes involuntarily fixed on the defendant as he was led in. Cedric Holt. He was brought through the side door in gray prison garb, hands cuffed behind his back, steps heavy. Cedric had wasted away, face gaunt and lifeless, skin ashen, eyes sunken from sleepless nights. Hair disheveled, stubble unkempt, hands trembling slightly despite efforts to stay composed. Seeing Cedric now, I no longer recognized the brother-in-law from Sienna's wedding photos. He had once been tall and smiling beside my sister, proudly holding Dylan. And now, a ghost, a criminal. I sat there, blood boiling, but with a trace of pity creeping in. Cedric raised his head, eyes scanning the room, and stopped on me. His gaze, full of regret, full of despair, chilled me. He immediately bowed his head as if unable to face me. The judge gavels. The trial continued with witness testimonies and evidence. But I only waited for his turn. My heart beat faster. The courtroom air was stifling, as if everyone held their breath. When it was his turn, Cedric was asked to stand and give his statement. His lawyer nodded and Cedric rose, legs shaking. He turned to search for me in the crowded room, hesitating a few seconds, eyes pleading as if begging for help. Then lowered his face, voice trembling but clear through the microphone. I fully admit to my criminal actions. I killed Maya Sloan in a fit of rage after a heated argument. The courtroom fell silent, only the scribbling of reporters. But that was just the surface. Cedric took a deep breath, voice more broken. But I have to tell everything. I had an affair with Maya since Sienna, my wife when she was alive. Whispers rose, but the judge gavels for silence. Cedric continued. That sweet relationship made me increasingly dependent on Maya, believing everything she said. It was Maya who suggested, lured, manipulated us both into planning to kill Sienna to claim her life insurance. The entire courtroom went dead silent as Cedric began detailing it. Hearing this, my blood seemed to freeze. My breath caught, ears ringing, the world spinning. Kill Sienna? My sister, the kind, forgiving one who always smiled and loved life. Killed by her own husband for money? I never imagined my sister's death was caused by the man she shared a bed with. The car accident 3 years ago, slippery road, loss of control, now revealed as murder? I gripped the chair arm, nails digging into my palm, but felt no physical pain. Only the heart-wrenching agony, like being torn apart. Cedric continued, voice halting and shaking. After Sienna died, Maya promised we'd build a new life with the insurance money. But it was all lies. She used me, exploited me. He paused, swallowing, eyes red. When Bowden warned me, I started paying more attention, secretly following Maya. And that's when I discovered Maya didn't love me as she claimed. She was involved with another man and planning to move on without me. I sat there, body cold, sweat pouring despite the air-conditioned room. Before me, Cedric continued his testimony, voice trembling but trying to stay steady. Not just emotional betrayal, Maya intended to exploit me to the end, forcing me to take out loans in my name, transfer assets she would control. Sienna's villa, the insurance money, all of it. His voice broke. Tears welled up, streaming down his gaunt, worn face after days in custody. Overwhelmed by pain and betrayal from all sides, I confronted Maya the night of the murder to get answers. The confrontation turned into a fierce argument. She mocked me, called me a fool. I clenched my hands until numb as he continued. In a moment of uncontrollable rage, I killed her. I truly loved her. But everything was a lie. I sat there, body ice cold, heart feeling crushed. I looked at the man standing in court, the one who had once called me brother, held Dylan proudly, and couldn't comprehend how a person could cause such ultimate pain. Cedric, the betrayer, the murderer, now crying in regret but too late. The moment Cedric confessed, Sienna's death was my fault. I felt the world spiral. His voice echoed in my head, repeating, my fault. I killed Sienna for the insurance money. I didn't hear the jury murmuring, didn't hear the judge gavels for silence, didn't hear Maya's family's stifled sobs. I only heard one sound, my heart shattering as the truth about Sienna's death was exposed, from the mouth of the husband she had trusted most. I sat motionless, tears streaming without realizing. Sienna, my sister, the family's emotional pillar, always smiling despite hardships. She married Cedric, trusting him, bore Dylan, loving him. And now, she died because of him. I recalled the pouring rain at the funeral, Dylan sobbing uncontrollably, Cedric holding him, pretending grief. All lies. The unease about the accident, slippery road, loss of control, now crystal clear. Premeditated murder. I gripped tightly, nails breaking skin and drawing blood, but physical pain was nothing compared to the heartache. The trial continued, lawyers asking more, but I heard nothing. My mind reeled. How dare he? How evil was Maya? And Dylan? What if the boy learned his father killed his mother? I stood up, leaving the courtroom midway, legs trembling. In the hallway, I leaned against the wall, gasping. Tears poured. Sienna, I'm sorry. I couldn't protect you. In the weeks following the first trial hearing, I lived in a nameless emptiness. Everything around me seemed hazy, as if I were walking through thick fog, unable to see the path ahead. I still woke up in the mornings, brewed coffee, drove Dylan to school, and forced a smile when the boy told stories about his friends, but inside, everything felt like it was collapsing layer by layer. I watched Dylan running and playing in the yard, laughing loudly as he threw the ball, and wondered why life was so cruel. The boy was only 9 years old, had lost his mother to murder, and now, his father to prison. I tried to create a normal life for him. Warm breakfast, picking him up for afternoon play, reading books to lull him to sleep at night. But night after night, when Dylan was soundly asleep, I sat alone in the living room, mind blank, with only Cedric's confession echoing. Killed Sienna. For the insurance money. I punched the wall, tears streaming, but didn't dare cry loudly for fear of waking the boy. Why hadn't I suspected sooner? The unease about Sienna's accident, slippery road, loss of control, now a harsh truth. News about the case dominated the media daily like an unending nightmare. Every morning I turned on the TV and there it was, glaring headlines like, "Husband kills wife for insurance money, shocking confession in court," accompanied by images of a gaunt Cedric, Maya smiling in old photos, and even Sienna, my sister, from funeral pictures 3 years ago. Each report was a knife twisting into memories of Sienna. Her death was no longer a vague accident, but the result of blatant betrayal from her own husband. The press dug into every detail of the hearings, evidence from Maya's phone, messages luring Cedric, the car accident plan, witness testimonies, greedy motives, exact timing. Each article peeled back another layer of darkness our family had been unaware of for 3 years. I read with trembling hands, tears blurring my vision. Cedric and Maya met at the bar, planned it, then executed it. Sienna died on the rainy mountain road. Brakes tampered with? Poison? I turned off the device, threw the phone, screamed silently inside. Then one afternoon, Derek and Zaria came to visit. I was sitting with Dylan building Lego, the boy laughing loudly as the tower was completed, when the doorbell rang. Opening the door, I froze. My parents stood there, faces devastated, eyes red from too much crying. Mom, Zaria, looked 10 years older, silver hair disheveled, hands clutching her bag as if afraid to let go or she'd collapse. Dad, Derek, stood behind, shoulders slumped, eyes vacant. When I opened the door wider, Zaria burst into loud sobs, rushing to hug me tightly as if holding on to the last remnant of Sienna. She cried uncontrollably, shoulders shaking. "Sienna, our daughter. How did it come to this?" I hugged Mom, tears streaming, but tried to keep my voice steady. "Come inside, Mom, Dad." Derek stood behind, trying to stay composed, but his hands trembled and his eyes showed complete breakdown, like a once strong man now utterly shattered. When they entered and saw Dylan curled up asleep on the sofa, tired after playing, mouth still slightly smiling in dreams, Zaria burst into sobs again. She sat beside him, gently stroking his hair, lips trembling. "Poor boy, he's lost his mother, now his father too. Dylan, Grandma, and Grandpa are here." Dylan woke, bewildered, hugging her, not understanding why she cried. Derek sat at the dining table, forehead in his hands, eyes distant. He spoke softly, as if to himself. "If only we'd known. If only she'd said something before she died. How could Cedric do this?" The broken words made the atmosphere even more heartbreaking, like a shattered family clinging to the last bit of warmth. I sat down, voice choked. "I'm sorry, Mom, Dad. I never imagined." Then I told them everything. What happened before the trial, Cedric's confession, the truth about Sienna's death. My parents fell silent, no more anger, no blame. Only the despair of parents who lost a child they couldn't protect. Mom stroked Dylan's hair, crying, "My gentle daughter. Why did she suffer like this?" Dad grasped my hand. "Be strong, son. For Dylan." After hours sitting with the grandson, Mom telling old stories about Sienna, Dylan listening wide-eyed, Dad silently holding the boy, they urged me to continue caring well for Dylan, then quietly left, carrying a heavy pain no words could soothe. I saw them to the door, hugging tightly. "Take care of yourselves. I'll handle everything." Their car disappeared. I closed the door, slumped to the floor, sobbing. Dylan ran over. "Are you crying, Uncle?" I wiped tears. "It's okay. Dust got in Uncle's eye." But inside, guilt gnawed. Why did our family have to suffer like this? At the same time, news reported that those involved in the fraud ring had been arrested in a major sweep. The tattooed man, Jax, as Mark had said, and several others in the network were detained for investigation. part of the scam was exposed thanks to Cedric's confession, targeting widowed men, seizing assets, loan transfers. I watched the news, heart in turmoil. Justice came late, but at least Maya and her accomplices couldn't harm anyone else. My phone rang. "Mark, they've all been caught," he said, voice low. "Thanks to Cedric's testimony." I was silent a moment, then replied softly, "But Sienna, my sister, she can't come back." On the other end, Mark sighed. He said, "I know. Nothing can make up for that, but you did everything you could." The call ended. I gripped the phone tightly, letting the emptiness spread slow and heavy. The final sentencing trial came weeks later. I attended again, sitting in the back row, heart heavy. The courtroom was more crowded, reporters packed. Cedric was led in, still gaunt but his eyes now vacant, as if accepting fate. The judge read the verdict. Cedric convicted of second-degree murder plus conspiracy leading to Sienna's death. Total sentence, 34 years imprisonment, no parole for at least the first 20 years. The courtroom murmured. Maya's family clapped, but I sat still. Hearing the sentence, I felt no joy, no relief, only exhaustion. Exhausted from the cruel truth, Sienna killed by her husband, Dylan orphaned. Exhausted facing my parents' pain they called daily, voices weak. Exhausted maintaining the last bit of peace for Dylan. I left court, drove home, mind blank. Justice arrived, but the pain remained. A few weeks later, I decided to visit Cedric in prison. Not for forgiveness, my heart was full of anger, unforgiving forever, but because I needed one final answer. Some reason to close the obsession haunting me. The prison was on the outskirts. High concrete walls, barbed wire, chilling atmosphere. I passed security, waited in the visiting room, glass partition table, old telephone. Cedric appeared with a collapsed face, disheveled hair, weary eyes with no fight left. He wore prison garb, steps heavy, sat opposite me, shoulders slightly shaking as if his body bore an unbearable weight. Through the glass, he looked at me, eyes red. "Bowden, you came to visit?" I looked straight at Cedric, no beating around the bush. In that cold visiting room, I asked only one question, slow and clear. "Why did you betray and kill Sienna?" Cedric bowed his head for a long time. His hands clenched until knuckles whitened, as if holding himself from crumbling. After a while, he looked up, eyes bloodshot, voice trembling, but each word clear. "I was weak. I was greedy. I let my own blindness control every decision." He paused, swallowing dryly, then continued. "Maya approached me very systematically. She talked about money, about an easier, wealthier life. She mentioned Sienna's insurance, said Sienna trusted me completely, that no one would suspect." Tears welled on his gaunt face. I listened. I couldn't stop. I let those words override my reason. I destroyed my marriage myself, destroyed my family, and ultimately destroyed my own soul. His voice completely broke as he continued. "I'm sorry, Bowden. I'm sorry to Sienna. I know this apology means nothing, but I have to say it. I was the one who ruined her life, the only person who ever trusted me completely." I sat there, listening to every word, but my heart didn't soften. When I spoke, my voice was cold, leaving no room for hope. "No matter how much you regret, no matter how much you cry, I will never forgive you." I looked straight at him, unflinching. "What you did can't be washed away with apologies. You'll bear the law's sentence and your consciences for the rest of your life." Cedric nodded slightly. No rebuttal, no more pleading. His face was despairingly calm, as if that answer was what he'd long awaited. Before standing to leave, he hesitated, then said, voice hoarse, "I have one last thing to ask you." He looked straight at me, eyes empty. "Please take care of Dylan for me. I'm not worthy to be a father. I'm not worthy to appear in the boy's life ever again." His voice choked, but he forced the words. "The only thing I can do for my son is to become a name erased." I stood looking at Cedric one last time. No pity, no anger, just complete closure. Then I turned and walked out of the cold prison visiting room, leaving Cedric there with the law's sentence and his own. On the drive home, cold wind rushed through the car window, but my heart was calmer. The answer was there, painful as it was. Now it was time to close it for Dylan, for Sienna. But the pain still smoldered like an unhealed wound. After completing the guardianship procedures, everything seemed to move faster than I had imagined. CPS inspected my home a few more times, checking the living environment, gently interviewing Dylan, assessing my caregiving ability. I sat there, hands clenched under the table, answering each question calmly, though my heart was full of worry. "Mr. Reed, are you certain you want to adopt your nephew? This is a long-term commitment," the social worker asked, eyes scrutinizing me. I nodded firmly. "Absolutely certain. Dylan is my nephew, all that's left of my sister." They nodded, signed the papers, and finally, I officially became Dylan's guardian. The documents arrived one drizzly afternoon, the ink dry on the white pages, but they felt like a strong bond tying the two of us together. I decided to keep the full truth hidden until the boy was mature enough to seek it out himself. Dylan was only 9 years old, far too young to bear the additional pain of learning his father killed his mother, the conspiracy, fraud, and betrayal. I hid all the newspapers, turned off the news when he was nearby, and only spoke of Sienna as a wonderful mother, of Cedric as a father in serious trouble. "When you're older, I'll tell you everything," I told myself. But my heart was full of apprehension. Would the boy forgive me if he knew I'd hidden it, or resent me? That thought kept me awake, but I knew it was the right choice. Protect Dylan first. I sold the villa tied to those painful memories soon after. The villa, once a wedding gift for Sienna, where I'd installed cameras and discovered Cedric and Maya where the tragedy began, now felt like a haunting ghost. I called a real estate agent, signed the sale quickly without regret. With the proceeds, I bought a small, simple house on the outskirts of Denver with a lush garden, cozy bedrooms, and a spacious kitchen for us to cook together. On moving day, I drove with Dylan. The boy sat in the back, hugging his stuffed animal, eyes wide at the changing scenery. "Is this the new house, Uncle? Does it have a yard?" he asked, voice excited mixed with worry. I smiled. "It has a yard, kiddo, your own room, and Uncle will build a swing too." We moved in, a few boxes of clothes, books, toys, and I felt it clearly. This was our new space, for Uncle and nephew to start over from scratch. No more haunting lavender scent from the villa. No more images of Cedric laughing with Maya through the cameras. Just us, Uncle and nephew, rebuilding from zero. But as I closed the door of the old place one last time, I paused, hand on the frame, heart tightening. "Sienna, would you forgive me?" The lingering apprehension remained. Would the past return to haunt us? Dylan seemed to understand more deeply than adults realized. The boy never mentioned his father again, as if choosing to close that door himself to avoid worrying me. In the early days, I waited for Dylan to ask about Cedric, about prison, but the boy stayed silent. He didn't want to bring it up, as if knowing it would only sadden me. The boy focused on the new life, running in the yard, drawing pictures of our uncle-nephew family, laughing loudly during play. I watched Dylan, heart full of surprise mixed with ache. How could a 9-year-old be so mature? Was he hiding his pain or truly choosing to forget? That thought made me anxiously watch his every gesture, a forced smile, a distant look, but Dylan seemed okay, like a flower blooming after the storm. Our life gradually became peaceful, like a calm river after rapids. We built small habits, moments that warmed my heart amid the lingering pain. We cooked together, Dylan standing on a stool, holding the spoon to stir soup, giggling when flour splattered. "Uncle, I ruined the soup," I laughed, wiping his face. "It's okay, Uncle will teach you again." Afternoons we did homework, Dylan biting his pencil solving math, me sitting beside explaining, heart swelling with pride when he exclaimed, "I get it now, Uncle." Friday nights we watched cartoons, sprawled on the sofa, eating popcorn. Dylan leaning his head on my shoulder, laughing at the silly characters. Weekends, we raced to see who woke first, Dylan usually won, running in to shake me. "You lost, Uncle. I win today." Those moments made me feel clearly that Sienna's void was being filled by Dylan's laughter, gentle, clear, no longer trembling like the early days. The boy who once huddled in fear now laughed freely, ran wildly. But sometimes I paused watching Dylan sleep deeply and anxiously wondered, would this peace last? Or would the past return like a ghost? Occasionally, I took Dylan to visit Grandma and Grandpa. Those trips were like healing medicine for the whole family. Arriving at their suburban home, Dylan rushed in, hugging Zaria tightly. "Grandma, I missed you so much." Zaria smiled, eyes glistening with tears, holding him. "We missed you too." Watching my parents hug Dylan, showing him how to water plants or garden, Derek kneeling, holding the watering can. "Just a little water, grandson, the plant will grow slowly." I saw in their eyes a light that had long faded and now reignited, the light of hope. My mother, Zaria, who had cried endlessly after the trial, now smiled when Dylan picked flowers for her. "Thank you, my love." My father, Derek, who had been silent, now told funny stories, making Dylan laugh loudly. Those visits filled me with anxious warmth. Was this hope fragile or enduring? But watching Dylan run in Grandma and Grandpa's garden, I knew. We were healing, little by little. One late autumn afternoon, I watched Dylan running in our new yard, laughter mingling with the biting cold wind, golden leaves swirling around the boy. He chased the ball, face flushed, shouting in delight. I stood on the porch holding a hot coffee mug, silently watching. That moment made me pause and reflect on the painful journey. From returning to the villa and uncovering secrets following Maya reporting to CPS to the murder tragedy, shocking trial and prison visit with Cedric. It all felt like a long nightmare, full of suspense, unease, pain. But now, watching Dylan laugh loudly, I realized that clinging to the good had saved us both from the darkness. We had nearly fallen. I once empty, Dylan once terrified, but love had pulled us up. From all the events, I understood that loss can break people, but it can also make them stronger to protect what's left. Sienna gone, Cedric imprisoned, but Dylan here, and I would be strong for the boy. I realized facing the truth, no matter how bitter, is the only way to end the pain and begin healing. No fleeing, no hiding forever. I would tell Dylan when he was older, but now, let him be happy. And I deeply felt that loving and caring for those still here is always more important than endlessly chasing what can't be saved. Sometimes they are the reason to keep going. Dylan, with his clear laughter, warm hugs, was my reason. We would live, be happy despite the smoldering past. And perhaps that was the most beautiful ending to this tragedy.